Brahma Gururvishnu Gururdevo Maheshwaraha Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedyadravitam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Yata sarvani bhutani pratibhanti stitani cha yatraivo pashamam yanti tasmai satyatmane namaha. There you go. Do you want to get your meditation chairs?
Actually, that's fine.
All right. So can I ask you to chant? How's your voice?
I can chant.
All right. So can someone share with us where we are?
Starting number 1 on chapter 15.
Chapter 15, verse 1. Nice and loud so they can hear you.
Panchadashaha Sargaha, chapter 15. Uddalakopakhyana, the story of Uddalaka. Section 1, Vishrantya Peksha, the expectation of repose. Shri Rama Vacha Uddalakena Bhagavan Kathamanta Vicharitam. Shri Rama said, Revered Sir, how was it investigated within by Uddalaka?
Going on.
Vasishta Vacha Uddalako Muni Kaschit Alpa Pragno Vicharavan Tata Kramena Tapasa Shakharthai Niyame Yamaihi Vivekvan Babhuvatha Chintayamasa Dhiradhi. A certain ascetic by name Uddalaka of meager intelligence was possessed of reflection on or investigation into truth or reality. Thereupon, in course of time, he became discriminative through austerity, study of the import of the scriptures, religious observations, and moral restraints. Then he, of a steady or resolute intellect, reflected as follows.
So this guy is of meager intellect. He's not that bright. Or we can say that his mind is gross. So that when he does investigation, he doesn't have that direct experience of the spaciousness of the self. So he engages in the practices that the scriptures advise for all of us to purify the mind. Religious austerities, devotional practices, study of the scripture, and investigation. Did I get them all? I think so. All right, next verse.
Kim tat prapyam pradhanam syat yat vishrantau nasochyate kadaham mananatite pade param pavane chiram vrishantri meshyami nirvikalpa samadhina iti chinta paravasho dhyana bhyasam chakarasa. What is that most important thing that could be obtained, which is not grieved for on cessation? When shall I obtain repose at last, or for a long time, in the most holy abode, which is beyond thinking or cognition, by absorption in absolute consciousness, without the differentiation of the knower, the known, and the knowing? Subject to such reflection, he performed or began the practice of meditation.
Yes. So he wants to know, when will I find peace? When will I find repose? When will I experience nirvikalpa samadhi? So again, if we've studied some of the scriptures, one of the things that can happen is that nirvikalpa samadhi itself becomes a goal. What I like to say is, don't worry about it. Focus instead on, do you know your essential nature? Now, Swamiji always used to use this example. The jiva, the sense of individuality, is like a hydrogen or helium balloon. And it's tied down by innumerable threads. These are our vasanas. So what can you and I do? Viveka, Vairagya, Samadhi Guna, Moksha. Practice our discrimination between the self and the not self, the real and the unreal. In terms of our attachments and identifications, let go, let go, let go. Samadhi Guna, keep tuning up the mind, keeping it intensely introverted. Mumukshutva, make seeking liberation the most important thing in your life. Swamiji would say, as the vasanas arise and we become aware of them and we renounce them and burn them up, it's like snipping each one of these threads. Keep snipping, snipping, snipping. That's all we can do. And you never know when it's the last attachment. But when it's snipped, the balloon is free to rise. When it rises, it expands, it expands, it expands, and then finally, pop! And the gas inside is merged with the atmosphere, and the balloon just goes up.
Jim, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So with what you're saying, I'm just trying to think of like what this means in practice. Is it like being aware of your desires and preferences for things? Is that like how you start removing or getting rid of popping these vasanas as you just mentioned?
Okay, so the root problem is ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where we practice our viveka. Keep inquiry into yourself. Who am I? I am not the body. I'm not the personality. I am not a person. What am I? I'm that ground of being. So when thoughts of self arise, drop them, drop, drop. When I find myself upset, You've heard me say this so many times. It's a spiritual axiom that if I'm disturbed, no matter the cause, I'm the one with the attachment. I'm the one with the expectation. I'm the one with the identification. Doesn't mean that the world isn't wrong a whole lot of the time. But if I'm upset about it, I've got an attachment. Drop it. Let it go. Go. Let it go. That's viveka and vairagya. Is that clear?
Mm-hmm.
Then, shamari guna. Keeping your attention intensely introverted, not letting it extrovert and all over the objects of the senses. This is hard. This is hard. But this is how, through insight, we're able to let go of the vasana. How do I know my mind is covered by vasana? What's the first power of a vasana? Avadana Shakti. Veiling power. I think I'm a person. So if I can remember, my mind's under the throes of vasana. Koham, who am I? I am Brahman. This world, let it go. Let it go. Over and over and over again. How do I know when it's just a preference and not a vasana? Doesn't rob me of self-experience. Still get the sense, aham brahmasmi, I am Brahman. Did that make it a little clearer?
Mm-hmm.
Very good question. Very good question. One of the things Swamiji used to say, if we're having trouble in our sadhana, chances are we need a tune-up. Say, tune up the mind. How do I tune up the mind? Go back to Viveka Chudamani and review the qualifications of a fit student. Chances are there's one of them that you may have neglected a bit. Polish that particular facet of the jewel of discrimination. Have I let go of my discrimination? Am I starting to take the objects, the people, the situations of the world? Have I lost my vairagya? Am I attached to things? I think that's over there is what's going to make me happy. Go. Now, we get no reinforcement for this in the world outside. The world outside will tell you exactly the opposite. So, by doing these things, his mind is somewhat purer. How can I achieve repose? How can I achieve nirvikalpa? Let's redefine nirvikalpa samadhi. What the scriptures say is that state, which is not a state, where the distinction between knower, knowing, and known is gone. There's always two ways we approach it. First, it's the mind state of no mind. Technically speaking, anytime the mind is free from what other scriptures call vimarsha, deliberation. There's prakasha, the pure light of awareness. Then there's vimarsha, deliberation. So when I stop, technically that's nirvikalpa samadhi. don't get caught up in romanticizing it. In the state of nirvikalpa samadhi, there's no sense of being an individual and there's no perception of the world. But sometimes it's just a flash. It's not a big, long event. Then when mentation, vimarsha, returns, the mind is conditioned. Oh, there's nobody there. There's just the space of consciousness. I thought I was a person, and I'm not. Call that the pratyabhigyana. That's the recognition, the aha that occurs in the subtle intellect. Now, the other definition of nirvikalpa samadhi, are you. Everything in the world is known through the triple factor. I, through seeing, know the table. I, through hearing, know the traffic. You go through all the 5 outer senses. I, through manas, mind, know feelings. I, through buddhi, know thoughts. Are you? How do you know you are you? You do not see, hear, taste, touch, smell, emote, or think yourself. And if you thin the mind, that's very clear. You don't disappear. Your ego disappears, but you do not. Who knows? I know it. What is the means of knowledge? Me. What is that which is known? Not as an object, yet I am not unknown. Me. Oh. Nirvikalpa is another name for the self. So those of us who know the great Shankara hymn, Nirvana Shaptakam, one of the verses starts, Aham nirvikalpo. What does that mean? You're our Sanskritist to share.
I am nirvikalpa.
Doesn't say I'm in nirvikalpa. Doesn't say I've achieved nirvikalpa. Doesn't say that at all. What does it say? I am nirvikalpa. So we always teach these two understandings. Now, listen carefully. If the names and forms of the phenomenal world are just imagination, they're not really there. It's just a trick of the mind. When are you ever not nirvikalpa? Always, we teach both understanding. The yogis tend to stress the first. We Vedantins certainly do not deny the value of the mind state of no mind. Here's the self, here's the mind, waking state, dream state, folded up in deep sleep. Nirvikalpa samadhi. The mind returns and goes, oh my gosh, there's nothing there. The mind sees its own fundamental unreality. No thought of self is real. Now, for some of us, Swamiji used to call the white heat of meditation. You may have the grace. Your mind thunders to a stop. Time stops. Then when the mind returns, you literally see Genesis, creation take place. Oh, you are that ground of being. Just like for the ordinary person, they never doubt that they have a human body. So also, after Nirvikalpa, all doubts are dissolved. But again, for some, it may just be a little click. So do not chase Nirvikalpa. Instead, practice viveka, vairagya, samadhi, mumukshutva, and let nirvikalpa sneak up on you from the heart, if it's hard. Again, do not make your goal nirvikalpa. Make your goal, do I know who I am? Focus on that. This is a very important point. Any thoughts on this?
Jim, in the example of you snipping the balloon, what is it a test to know if a vasana has truly been snipped?
What is the test to know if a vasana is truly snipped? Because if it isn't, don't worry. You'll get triggered. You'll get identified. But what are the ways in which some people may fool themselves? If you again return to that section in Viveka Chudamani, where he talks about the annihilation of the vasanas, there's quite a bit of material on it. If the vasanas are annihilated and the mind has retired into the self, the mind does not extrovert into the world. So this is part of the Vedanta rationalizations. Oh, I want to be rich and I want cars and jewels and all this kind of stuff, but it's not really real. I just want it. But you will find out, because when, not if, really identify, you're going to get upset. It's the Lord. Is that useful? Now again, we have the example of King Janaka. Fought his wars, ministered his country, made love to his wife and his other wives. Get several wives. Got drunk at parties. Completely. Then we have, on the other hand, people like Nachiketas. Completely pure, the ideal pattern. Able to sit outside Lord Yama's palace No food, no water for 3 days. Robert, please. So here is the answer. If you still have doubt, continue to do practice. Self-realization swallows all doubt. Do not rely on what someone else tells you. If you know who you are, Lord Krishna himself will come up and say, no, you're fooling yourself. Likewise, Lord Shiva himself says, all right, I have enlightenment certificates for you. Nonsense. Do you ever doubt that you have a human body? Do you? No. That's effortless. If you wake up in the morning and your lovely wife says, oh, in the middle of the night, you changed into a cow. Make her some strong tears. Now, what will happen after realization of the self? Oftentimes for people, there's a period where there's seeming tapas, there's a purification period. Ramana Maharshi was 11 years, where you burn that stuff out. Things, more and more things fall. This is why don't do what I did, which is I started to teach far too early. Because this one wasn't very pure. I was absolutely steeped up inside. Sure confused other people. No regrets, that was my prarabdha. We can talk more about it offline if you want. All right, next verse.
Vishaye niyamane tu chitte markatalanchale nasalebhe samadhana pratishtham pratidayinim. With his mind moving like a monkey, being carried away by objects of the senses, he did not obtain stability in deep meditation, which is the bestower of happiness.
Yeah. So poor Udalika, he has this goal of sthita prajna. I love this word. Root is tha tishtati, which means to stand, to be still, to be established. All these English words come from that Sanskrit root. So his mind isn't rooted, isn't still. So he could not see who he is. Again, one of my favorite metaphors, just like if you guys went hiking near a lake, was the water really clear?
Mm-hmm.
Could you see the pebbles and things at the bottom of the lake?
Yeah.
Yeah. But if a wind had come up and ruffled the surface, could you have seen the pebbles at the bottom? So also for us, It is difficult, maybe impossible, to see for the first time at least what is the ground of my being. And the winds of desire and aversion and attachment are disturbing the surface. Next verse.
कदाचित् उदितागर्भं तेज पश्यति विस्तृतं कदाचित् केवलं व्योम कदाचित् निबिडं तमः. At some time, he sees a diffused or extended light having the appearance of the risen sun. At another time, he sees merely the sky. Yet another time, he sees dense darkness.
So, when the mind still has avarana shakti, in meditation we have diverse experiences. Now, all the time, I have students who come to me and they say, "Oh, Jim, I'm having shakti buzzing in my body, all this energy. Am I getting close?" Oh, I'm feeling my crown chakra opening. I think I'm getting close. Oh, my third eye. All this intense pressure in my third eye. Oh, I'm chanting Lalita Sahasranam every day and I'm having visions of the mother. If it has a beginning and an end, if it occurs in time, if it has qualities or characteristics, that's not it. Notice it. It's pleasurable, enjoy it a little bit, then drop it. If you can see it, that's not it. If you can know it as an objective experience, that's not it. This is why drug experiences can be so seductive. Because you have a drug experience and you feel I'm one with everything. I was just united with everything. Oh, this must be it. Then your mind says, oh, that was so great. I want to get back there. Maybe that was a glimpse. But what we're missing through all of this is who is there before you get high? Who is aware of the drug trip? And who's there after you come down? Something very ordinary. Me. Now find out who that is. And it's not nearly as ordinary as you think. Going on.
एवं पर्याकुलमना सलुठन् ध्यानवृत्तिषु एकदा गिरिकान्तारे चोपविशा यसने क्वचित् निश्चल सुदृढं बद्ध्वा पद्मासनम् उदङ्मुखः निर्विकल्प समाध्यर्थं चकारे मान् विचारणाम्. Thus, with his mind confused and wallowing in the meditative action or course, he once did this investigation or inquiry, having sat in some place in a mountain forest, unmoving, facing the north, and firmly fixing or resuming the yogic pose of Padmasana to achieve absorption in the undifferentiated consciousness of Nirvikalpa Samadhi.
Now, so this is a literary device. You do not need to be in the lotus posture in a quiet forest facing north. You can be cross-legged in Sukhasana. You can be sitting in a chair. And you can be in your house or your apartment. But what's of value is endeavoring to silence the mind, to reduce the frequency, the volume of thought. Don't take your thoughts seriously. One of the little mantras that helped me is I can't think a real thought. None of my thoughts are real. Another one is I have no thoughts or feelings of my own. None of them belong to me. It's just mine. Swamiji used to say the way to heal the mind is to get out of the mind. Take on what we call Sakshi Bhavana, the attitude of the feeling of the witness. Live in this higher instinct, always watching, watching, watching. Not doing anything. Watching and not identifying. Next verse.
Section 2, Antar Vicharana, Inner Investigation. Api murkha mana kortham tava sansara vrittibihi yadi yasi mahinangram brahmalokam athapi va tanna nirvana mayasi vinopasha manamritam. Foolish mind, what is the purpose or advantage to you by your occupation with worldly existence? Whether you go to the cavity of the earth or even to the world of Brahma, the creator, you do not then attain to nirvana or emancipation from the objective world and union with the Supreme Spirit without the nectar of quietude.
So I like this verse because he begins to talk to his mind, to see its phenomena for what it is. Many of you have heard me share that in my sadhana in the ashrama, my nickname for my mind, Mudha, who most importantly, pay attention when you find yourself wanting. And it's so boring and it's so repetitive. You hear me do this all the time. Who got upset this week? Tell me this is the first time you have that feeling. Aren't you tired of it? You're gonna let it go. Noticing that when I do have an object of desire, it makes me happy. Own your own ananda. That's just a taste of yourself. So here Uddalaka is having a similar experience. He sees his stupid mind doing its stupid things. More, better, different. I'll be happy with. It'll be better if. Gimme, 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 gimme. I want to do it my way. over and over again. The same stupid and repetitive stories. Just the names and faces change. Same incredibly boring story. Give it up. So let's see if he's successful. Going on.
Shotratam murkha samprapya nishphalo dhyama vardhitam dhiya shabdanusarinya mrigavatma shayam vraja. Fool, having obtained the nature of the ear or the organ of hearing, grown by futile exertion, do not proceed to destruction through your intellect going after sound like the deer. Note, this refers to the deer being caught in a trap enamored of the fowler's music.
Yes. So from this text, which draws on an Upanishadic metaphor, he's going to do what Shankara has also done in Viveka Chudamani. The classic imagery, the deer goes to destruction because of sound. It hears the flute and the whack it and shoot it. The elephant, it goes to destruction because it loves to rub. It loves to rub. The bee, because of its smell, goes to destruction. The fish, because of its hunger. The moth, because it goes to the flame. So you and I, we have fivefold capacity for destruction. I was talking with a student the other day, and he just didn't know what he wanted. He didn't know whether he wanted to go out and hook up or get a relationship or use drugs or do this. I mean, you could just watch his mind fixing on what object's going to do it, what object's going to do it. And he knew the vanity of all the objects, but the mind kept shifting, kept changing channels like the TV. Does your mind do that? So here Udalaka is beginning to see. Going on.
Vaktam agatya dukkhaya sparshonmukhataya dhiya murkha ma paddatam ehi gajilumbha the gajendradvat. Fool, having attained the nature of the skin or the organ of touch for experiencing sorrow, do not go to the state of bondage with the intellect intent on the sense of touch, like the lordy elephant longing for the she-elephant.
Yes.
Note, the reference is to the well-known device of bringing in a tame she-elephant to decoy the wild elephants.
Yes. Next one. Same idea. Going on.
Chakshushim vrittimakshitya prabharupa chayonmukhim magacha dagadha tam murkha kantilubdha pratagnavat. Fool, having resorted to the state or function belonging to the eye or the organ of sight, and intent on the movement of form and light, do not go to the burnt state like the moth, covetous of brightness.
So the moth gets immolated in the fire. You and I, we see shiny objects. Off we go.
There's a note also. The moth attracted by the luster of a flame is destroyed by it. Kanti means both luster and beauty. The latter quality leads the passionate ones to destruction.
Next one.
Rasana bhavamagatya durnaswada kanchasya manashamehi padishyapindi laptatama vastayat. Having attained to the nature of the tongue or the organ of taste, do not proceed to destruction by the desire to taste bad food like the fish greedy to the ball on the fish hook. Note, the fish, attracted by bait, impelled by its desire to taste it, gets caught and destroyed. Man is also capable of digging his own grave through his teeth.
So some of us, our addiction is to food. Going on.
Grhana marga upashritya shariram bhoja kotare gandhon mukhataya bandham masaman bhringavad. Resorting to the path of the nose or the organ of smell, do not suffer bondage in the hollow of the body lotus through the eagerness for smell, like the black bee. Note, the black bee, attracted by the smell of the lotus, flies towards it, sits on it, and is ultimately enclosed, and the petals droop and close. In the above verses, Uddalaka warns his mind not to be ensnared by the experiences of the five senses.
Yes, very clear. So all of these, you've heard me again say, what I would do is everything is trinkets and baubles. Pretty to look at, but nothing substantial. It's not precious gems or precious gold. It's trinkets and baubles. Don't get involved emotionally. Any thoughts on this? Easy to say, not so easy to do. Going on.
Kuranga lipating gebha vina tai vina tue kaishako hatah sarve etai anarthaishva vyapta snyagnya kuta sukham karom yesha kimarthava tavaitat anushasanam. The deer, the black bee, the moth, the elephant, and the fish are indeed destroyed, one by one. Ignorant one, whence is happiness for one possessed of all these evils? For what purpose possibly do I carry out this your order? Note, Uddalaka continues to address his mind in this and the following verses.
So, Mudha, fool, why are you suffering under vancha? Want. And again, the key to mature vairagya is insight, seeing what's really going on. Next one.
Vicharanavata punsa chitta tvamapi nasiyat ananta syat matatvasya tanvi manasi sanstitihi nasam bhavati bilvanta vasitan dantino yatha. Mind, to the person possessed of investigation into reality, since you also do not exist, to the endless or infinite principle of the self, abidance in the mind is subtle, just as the residence of an elephant inside a bilva fruit does not happen.
So here he's now not only renouncing the sense objects and his attachments to them, but now he begins the renunciation of the mind itself. So, practically speaking, one of the most valuable lessons a yogi learns is just because you have an impulse doesn't mean you need to say or do anything. Most of us are actually tyrannized by the impulsive part of the mind. I was talking with a person several months ago. One of the things she's dealing with is she yells, she screams at her husband. And she says, well, isn't that normal? Doesn't everybody do that? And I said, no. That's abusive behavior. And of course, I asked, did that go on in your family of origin? Did people scream and yell at each other? She said, yes. Doesn't everybody? What if you did that at work? Or what if you saw some mother doing that to a child? You'd be horrified. And I bet that screaming voice is also self-directed. So we learn to let go. First of all, see this stuff. This is the deeper understanding of Swadhyaya. Normal interpretation of it is our own self-study of the scriptures, but it means also getting to know our own psychology, our own what we call kleshas, afflictions, or doshas, defects. Go. We're not real. They're just stories and tapes. Any thoughts on this? Again, easy to say, a challenge. So again, this is in my sadhana where I took up the practice. I cannot think a real thought. Let them go. All my stories of the past are like dreams. They're not here, not now. They are not. Now, caveat. If you've got trauma from your childhood, and it is suppressed, it's operative in your psyche and you're not aware of it. So maybe doing some trauma therapy might be of value to make what's unconscious conscious. But understanding in the end is the booby prize. Doesn't mean it goes away. Then we have to do the tapas. We have to practice letting that stuff go. It's just thoughts. Any thoughts on this? Going on.
Padangushtan shiro yavat pranasha pravicaritam nalabdho sau aham nama ko vasyat aham ityadayam. From the great toe up to the head, particle by particle, it has been examined. That one called I has not been obtained or apprehended. Who possibly could this I be?
So what he's engaging in is what I call the amputation meditation. So you're sitting in a chair. Imagine your feet are amputated. Are you still you? Imagine we have a friend. Your legs are amputated. Are you still you? What about your hands, your arms? Where are you? What part of your body is you. Now, most of us kind of think we're a disembodied head. What was that cartoon they had where they had people from the past and they kept their heads in these jars?
Futurama.
Futurama, yeah. They had Richard Nixon. I always thought that was very funny. Is that what you are? A Futurama head inside a jar? If your eyes were gone, would you be you? If you were deaf, would you be you? If you had a stroke, would you be you? If you couldn't remember, would you still be you? So it's a marvelous exercise, because what we see is the self is not located in the body. My sense of I is independent of the body or any part of it. Next one.
Idam masam idam raktam imanyasthini dehake imete shwasamaruttah kovasyat ahamityayam. This here is the flesh. This here is the blood. These here are the bones in the body. These here are your vital breaths. Who possibly could this I be?
So he now is beginning to see that every part of the body and the prana are objects of awareness. I know it. This here is that. I tend to like to use time. When you were a child, you had a little body. You went through adolescence, your body changed. You're an adult and your body has changed again. Any of you do Throwback Thursday on Facebook where you post a photo of yourself, 10, 15 years ago? Any of you done that? My friends do Throwback Thursday. Anyway, where did that person go? That body's gone. But you did not cease to be at any moment. I had COVID 2 weeks ago. Pretty sick. I didn't even realize once the symptoms went that I was having some fatigue. My energy level was low. Till I woke up this morning. Oh, my energy's back. But I am not the energy. I'm the knower of energy. I'm the knower of health and illness. Next verse.
Idam ghanam iyam jahva tvak iyam shravane ime idam chakshu asau sparsha kovasyat ahamityayam. This here is the nose. This here is the tongue. This here is the skin. These here are the ears. This here is the eye. That is the sense of touch. Who possibly could this I be?
Yes. So I am the one who illumines the senses. What is that I that knows every sense perception? There's a very famous Zen koan, a bell ringing in an empty sky. So my modification of it is just tune up the mind. Listen to the traffic. This is the question Uddalaka is asking. Going on.
Ahameva hi sarvatra naham kischit apiha va ityevam vasati drishti metaro vidyate kramaha. Indeed, I alone am everywhere, for I am not here, even a little. Such a view like this is real. Another manner does not exist.
So, where am I? How big am I? So, in the space between your thoughts, with the attentive faculty introverted, notice the knower. Sometimes it seems like I'm a point from which all perception proceeds. Sometimes it feels like I'm vast and empty and spacious. And yet I'm everywhere and through all things, through every perception, feeling, thought that I've ever had. I have been there to know it. And in the deepest meditation, I see the dissolving of the ego sense, and maybe it's reforming, the rising and falling of the ego itself. I am everywhere. I am nowhere. I pervade every experience. Next verse.
Chiram ajnana dhurtena bodhitosmi hyahantaya punana sanshayam yenam swarupartha paharinam. For a long time, I have been overpowered surely by the rogue of ignorance due to egotism. I shall not again resort to him who takes away or steals the wealth of one's own true nature.
Yes. So, again, he is clear. I am that Chidakasha. I am not a person. I will not let the robe of egoism rob me again. So, we never see ignorance come upon the mind. You can be in meditation, or reading scripture, or here in class. Very clear. I am that space of consciousness. But somehow out there in the world, I get identified. I never see it happen. This is the deeper understanding of the beginninglessness of ignorance. So, what we want to do, I always think of it, it's like you're in a dream and you're at a Chinese restaurant and you open a fortune cookie, and inside the fortune cookie it says, don't believe anything you're seeing, you're in the midst of a dream. So the fortune cookie in the dream of ignorance is, break it open. If I think I'm a person, I'm deluded. Don't believe anything. Remember this. If I think I'm a person, I'm deluded. My mind will say, resolve all the problems of ego. Yoga says, drop the struggle. Remember who you are. Don't let the robe of Ahankriti rip you off. Any questions about this? Ignorance may be beginningless, but it has an end. and I know who I am. Next one.
वासनाहीनमप्येतत् चक्षुरान्द्रिय यैस्वतः प्रवर्ते बहि स्वार्थे वासनानात्र कारणम्. This mind, even without accumulated impressions, by itself proceeds outwards through the eyes and other sense organs among its objects. In this matter, accumulated mental impressions is not the cause.
So here, the mind proceeds out and perceives objects. Vasana is not the cause of that. In the end, the perception of the world is not problematic. Listen carefully. In the end, even desire need not be problematic. Ignorance is problematic. Let's go on and see what he says about it.
Tat indriyani murkhani tvaktva antavar vasana nijan sankalpa padapam trishna latam chitva manovanam vitatam bhumi masadhya viharami yatha sukham. Therefore, having set aside the stupid sense organs, having cut down the forest of the mind with trees of thought and creepers of desire, along with its own inner mental impressions, and having reached an extended land, I go about at will, for I as please.
Yes. So he's cut down the tree of ignorance itself, of sansara. He no longer takes the objects of the senses as real, as having inherent joy-giving or misery-producing qualities. He no longer believes in the reality of his mind. Does not take the desires, the impressions, the regrets, the memories, the worries. None of that is real. Mind quits throwing it up after. And what do? Put the robot on automatic pilot. Let it do as it will. Have no concern. You hear a car going down Grand Avenue. You hear it. But are you particularly concerned about where it's going, what it's going to do? Have the same attitude towards your body. Don't worry. How many more in this chapter or this section?
This was the last one.
Okay, we'll do one more and then we'll quit.
No, the section is over.
Oh, we finished it?
Yeah.
Section's over. Yeah.
All right, so we'll end here then. Any thoughts or questions about this?
I'm still feel like I'm a person. I got a ways to go. That's all I know.
But
Thanks, Jim.
You've been given techniques to scrub away at egoism.
Yes, I understand. I'm just saying it still seems quite difficult.
And remember what St. Augustine says. Every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. In Viveka Chudamani, when Shankar talks about the qualifications of the fit teacher, he says, who's as calm as a fire that has burned up its fuel. I love that one. Because what was the fire before the fuel was burned up? Raging inferno, meaning a mind filled with desires and aversions, compulsions, identification. And at the end of chapter 6, Arjuna says to Krishna, "Oh Krishna, trying to control the mind is like trying to control the wind." And Krishna says it's true, but it can be accomplished through practice. Someone will come to class, then they'll say, "Oh, I have this problem and I have that problem," and stuff like that. And I'll say, "When was the last time you meditated?" "Oh, it's been about a week and a half." Are you practicing your viveka and your vairagya? No, I don't think about it that much. Knock yourself out. It's your life. So it will shift if we're earnest, if we practice. And you're not unusual, Justin. Welcome to the human condition. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. I like Udalaka.
Thanks, Jim. Have a good night.